That is the intro music for this segment, everybody. Hello, I'm a cool guy with glasses. It's me, D. This is going to be a little bit shorter episode. I've done them in the past. It's the quadruple D, deep dives into diagnosis with D. That's me. You know me. It's your boy Dwight here to talk a little bit about diagnostic information. These are going to be something I'm putting together each week. Most of it, well, 3 out of 4 generally are going to go on the Patreon, and one will go on the regular feed, so you can hear both. Might sneak one out there for y'all once in a while as well, because I love y'all, and especially those patrons there will get a little extra. Did you know that June is PTSD month as well as Pride month? So those are going to be 2 areas of focus this month in the episodes that we're putting out. A little bit later on, I think this week, if we get the editing done, Lexi Taylor, who is an advocate for transgendered individuals and a coach for transition. We have an episode that we recorded that is going to be up for that. Had a wonderful time talking to her. You can also check out her interview recently on the Rise Today inspirational podcast, where she appeared talking about her experiences as well. So that's coming up in the vein of Pride Month, and then some other things there too, as well as talking about PTSD. And today is a DDDD on PTSD with MDMA. So a lot of letters, if you make things acronyms and put them into letters, it's not really an acronym to make a word, but if you put things into letters, you can, charge more for the treatment, I think. But today we're actually talking about research into treatment. Some actually really exciting research into treatment is what we're going to be focused on. So MDMA, also known as ecstasy, and that's being used, and psychedelics in general are being used for more studies. I believe that the success with ketamine, which we've had several episodes, a couple different guests coming on to talk about ketamine use, is helping to move that ahead. And we're seeing some interesting things being done with research, I think probably due to that in many ways. Tweet at me if I'm wrong about the history of that, but I believe that's where I'm seeing it evolve as well. So MDMA is actually a substance that was regarded as no medical use, no effective medical use. And now they're reevaluating that for many things. In fact, there's some interesting information I'm gathering that we'll probably go into in the future about how that's being studied in regards to treatment for social anxiety and autism as well. So interestingly enough, the thing I'm talking about today takes up a lot of the time and energy and funding for the research as well, that is just there. So there's a little bit of competition to try to help people with these things. So MDMA studies with PTSD, very exciting to see them entering into phase 3 research. What does that mean? Well, we'll tell you. Phases are how they break the research out. You've got 4 phases, and I looked this up today to try to make sure I'm telling you what's true, something that I always try to do as well. There's 4 phases mainly, and there's 3 before you see this kind of treatment hit the general market. So first of all, they start out by trying to make sure everything's safe and what the proper dosage would be. That would be phase 1, and those would be a lot of that research. A lot of research is done even before we get to the phases. We're talking phases of human trials, basically. So a lot of work has already been done, but to measure that, they usually have the number that I came up with when I was researching this today was about 15 to 50 patients. And it seems there's a little leeway on this because some of the studies are still in the lower numbers of patients, but there are several studies that are being replicated now. So phase 1, make sure it's safe. It's kind of important. Phase 2, we want to see if the presenting problem responds to the new treatment. Then you move into phase 3, where you're comparing the new treatment to what the established treatments are and see if it's better and if it gets better results. Interestingly enough, from phase 2 to phase 3, you're moving into having more people. Less than 100 usually is still in phase 2. Getting hundreds and hundreds of people is phase 3. And that's it seems they're moving into phase 3 now. They've done a few phase 3 studies, and they're doing more of those as well. So really, that's fascinating and quite exciting time to be aware of that. And I think it's when you hear that in the media and they say phase 3, well, sometimes one of the issues is that they lead articles and such lead with saying like this works, which spoiler alert, there's some indication that this works. But that's not really how research works. What happens is it seems to work in the phase 2 to 3 trials that are happening now. And won't that be exciting if we get to where we can use it in that way? I want to discuss one study in particular, excuse me, that we're looking at from an organization called MAPS, which is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. I didn't have that memorized, so that's the level of professionalism I'm bringing to you today. So one of the studies that they're doing, and they try to make these studies representative, get a lot of different people, basically, that they pull in, and basically to make these things representative, and also then to make them what they call double blind. They also try to reduce researcher bias and just all of these things that they try to guard. So what they're doing is they're bringing people in and they're doing placebo treatments as well as the actual treatment of the MDMA. For the studies that I'm reading about, they actually took people and they randomized them into different groups, and they had them receive 3 sessions of MDMA treatment. Okay. And one of the really interesting things is we look at the results here is that they say indications are so far that the number is 88% of people can expect to see some treatment response. Now, what does that mean, right? So PTSD, as you know, is an anxiety disorder, and it trips up a lot of the things that have to do with our perceptions to danger, our trigger points, and our either memories or flashbacks to traumatic experiences. Obviously, that's what the T stands for in post-traumatic stress disorder. And so when they're looking at that and they say that they are experiencing some effect, a couple things that they're measuring self-capacity, they're measuring ability to function in day-to-day life. If the person is able to have what they call affect regulation, which is basically emotional moderation skills and abilities, even more than skills. You can be taught skills, but if you're overwhelmed with anxiety attacks, you're just not, it's not going to work as well. And so looking at increase of that, they're measuring. They also are measuring attitudes towards other people. Trust levels, things like that can obviously be damaged quite a bit when you are struggling with PTSD, particularly depending on the type of PTSD. If it's combat related, if it's abuse related, those are going to interfere with the way that you look at people. The way you look at yourself is also a big part of this. So they do assessments and studies with therapeutic tools. And I don't have a list for you of specifically what tools they're using, but I'll give you a link here to the studies in a bit. Actually, why don't I do that right now? Well, I can do it right now, I believe. So I'm going to put that up there and leave that up there. It's for those listening just the audio, it is maps.org/MDMA/PTSD/MAPP1/. You might have hit the backwards button on that. Maps.org/MDMA/PTSD, I believe will probably get you there, but I just copied it out of the window. So now here's the really interesting thing. It was all interesting so far. Come on. Of course it is. In the control group, which is the control group that does not receive the MDA treatment, even those who think they are in some cases with the placebo effects, there's about a 32% that are receiving some bit of, in fact, tremendous like benefits. Oftentimes placebo effect and normal treatment obviously does something. That's why we've been using it. So about 32% of them are showing a reduction in symptoms from the kind of treatments we would usually use. And those symptoms, they're counting it as an effective treatment if the symptoms reduce enough that they no longer qualify for a diagnosis of PTSD, which is done through reported and observed and measured symptoms in the DSM-5. There is an episode, The Broken Brain, another quadruple D in the past, where I went over some of the symptoms, the DSM symptoms of PTSD. I'll dig that up and probably drop it back on the feed so people can hear it again here in PTSD month. You can listen to that as you gather around your PTSD tree and have your dye your PTSD eggs and hang up your paper chains and other tradition, whatever your traditions are for this month. That was dumb. But anyway, so here's the really, really fascinating thing is, once again, 32% of people in the control group who did not receive MDMA reduced symptoms enough that they no longer qualify for a diagnosis. What is the number with those that receive the MDMA treatments? Well, I don't have a drum roll noise ready, so I'm hitting the desk. 67%. That's a lot more. That is a statistically significant number that is higher. And if you think about such a pervasive, difficult to treat, and in many cases, these individuals have gone through treatment and had it not work for them before, which is one of the biggest dangers of that, is that we stop treatment, right? And sometimes we are benefiting from some emotional management and things like that, but people burn out of this not working, of things not working. And that's one of the biggest reasons for this type of research, is we're trying to isolate and hone in on things that will work. So pretty interesting stuff. And important part of the scientific method is, what does this mean for us, right? For those of us that might have loved ones or ourselves who suffer from trauma and would like to get in on this and try to get some treatment that is effective, right? So this is what it means. There's two parts to scientific study. One is caution. Now, a good researcher, and we've talked about this on the program before, when we have researchers on, will say, cool, this is awesome, but be cautious. Don't just think, particularly with this being a controlled substance that is available illegally, don't run out to your buddy with an MDMA hookup and think, I'm doing treatment. It's not how it works with ketamine and recreational use. That's not, that's not how it works, because you don't know what you're getting for sure. I've been talking about addiction on a couple of podcasts lately, and there's also a lot of fentanyl that is being put into all sorts of drugs that you wouldn't expect to be. That's always been a danger with heroin, but we're seeing that in a lot of different things, a lot of overdose deaths with people that are buying street drugs. So don't get killed, basically, is the main guideline there. But also with MDMA, it's oftentimes polluted with other club drugs or other things that are meant to accentuate it. I have known people who have reported to me that they've had experiences with pure MDMA or more pure ecstasy, and they've had a very different experience than with club drugging. And I can only assume that they're using good and controlled substances in the studies that are meant to be that way. So in no way should you take this as a reason to go out and score some ecstasy for self-treatment. Self-treatment is one of the markers of addiction. Let's be honest, guys. And let's just be careful out there. So we want to be cautious. We don't want to just jump into saying, well, this is going to work. That being said, actually, though, the other side of it is a balance that we should strike with hope, which is, this is hopeful and this is legitimately exciting. And this is something that you can expect to see being studied and used and move forward on. This is, like I said, this is taking up a lot of the research bucks and research time for MDMA and psychedelic treatments and for trauma. This is kind of a new direction that I think we're going to see, assuming that these studies are replicated, and so far the ones they're doing seem replicatable. Well, that's the information for today. I want to leave y'all once again with a lot of hope. There is hope. Treatment-resistant disorders and treatment-resistant psychological conditions are a big part of one of the things we talk about here on the show, but also in mental health treatment as well. So as they're trying to hone in on things that work instead of just things that we think work or we hope work. And that's a great thing. So thank you, everybody, for being here and for listening to me go on. Those of you that are subscribed to the Facebook group or the YouTube channel for Broken Brain Podcast, you can find that at facebook.com/Broken Brain Podcast, or you can look up Broken Brain Podcast. You have to put the whole Broken Brain Podcast in YouTube to find that. You can also go on Twitter at Break a Brain. Actually, new Instagram is just added, just kind of learning how to fool around with that. and that is at Brainiacs Ahoy. So all the Broken Brain things were taken. I didn't want to do Broken Brain 6,350 million. I think was the first one available. So you can go to Brainiacs Ahoy on Instagram. A couple of videos up there now. We're going to try to fit, if they'll let me fit one this big or a clip or something from this too. Thank you. Love y'all. We'll talk to you again. Look for the new episode, new episode, I should say, not live. This is live, coming out either later this week or the end of the week. And we'll talk to y'all very, very soon. Have a happy Pride Month and happy PTSD month as we move forward. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Court Arts Podcast Network. To listen to more Court Arts shows, visit courtemparts.com.